Hey everybody, I'm Raven Maureen, and today we're going to be making McCall's 8479. We're actually going to be making view A. So grab your sewing tools and let's go ahead and get started. So you're going to cut pattern piece number 1 and you're going to cut 2 for view A. Pattern piece number 11, cut 1 on the fold. Pattern piece number 9, cut 1, and this is the wrap. Pattern piece number 4, which is the front pocket, you'll cut 2. Pattern piece number 6, which is the left tab, and you're going to cut 2. Pattern piece number 3, which is the left fly, you're going to cut 1 of fabric, 1 of interfacing. Pattern piece number 2, the right fly, you're going to cut 1 of fabric, 1 of interfacing. Pattern piece number 5, which is your front pocket facing, you're going to cut 2 of fabric and 2 of interfacing. Pattern piece number 8, you're going to cut 2 of fabric, 1 of interfacing. Pattern piece number 12, cut 2 on the fold and 1 on the fold for interfacing. Pattern piece number 7, cut 2 of fabric, 1 of interfacing. And pattern piece number 10, which is your front belt, you're going to cut 2 of fabric, 1 of interfacing. So I'm going to be working just a little bit out of order of the instructions. So first I want us to focus on all the darts that we'll need to do for our skirt. And so this is pattern piece number 11, and I've already made my dart markings here. And there are 2 darts on this pattern piece. So if you're not familiar with how to make a dart, once you have your dart legs and your point on your fabric, go ahead and pin it in place, making sure that the pin matches the same point on this side as it does this side. And then there's a couple of ways to do this at your machine. You can either run a stitch and actually decrease the stitch length and have it trail off, or you can keep it at the same stitch length and put a knot at the end. And we're going to do this for pattern piece number 11 and pattern piece number 1. Okay, so once you have finished your darts for the back pattern piece number 11, go ahead and press those seams towards the center back. And go ahead and complete your darts for pattern piece number 1, and you are going to press that dart to the center seam, which is the straight edge. Okay, so we are going to take the left skirt front, and we are actually going to add our lamb chop pocket to the skirt front. So the facing, I want you to go ahead and finish this edge, and it should already be interfaced. And then what you're going to do is you're going to match your notches and then pin this. And you'll take this to your sewing machine and stitch it at 5/8 of a seam allowance. Go ahead and trim the seam allowance. And I'm going to take this to my iron, and I'm going to under press and under stitch this as well. And then that'll allow this to lay flat. So then I'm just going to do a quick stitch to make sure that this facing is going to lay down. So I did it on the side, and I'm also going to do it on the top. And then while I'm here at the sewing machine, I'm actually going to do a stitch along the straight edge and down across the bottom. That way I'll be able to fold this under at 5/8. So go ahead and do that stitch line right now. So now we're going to take this to our iron and we are going to press this. That way we have a nice clean edge. All right, so I have gone ahead and I have pressed under my raw edges on my lamb chop pocket. And now I am going to place this at this notch right here. There's a notch on the pocket and then there's a notch that's on this edge here. And you're gonna match those up. Okay, and what we're gonna do is we're going to do 2 rows of top stitching down this straight edge and then across the bottom here. And then you're gonna do a basting stitch on this edge and on this edge. All right, now your pocket is complete and it should look like this. All right, now we're taking pattern piece number 6. So one should be just your fabric and then the other one should be your fabric and your interfacing. And we're gonna place these right sides together and we are going to do a stitch across the top here and a stitch across the bottom. All right, so I've already done the stitch and now we're gonna trim across these areas here. Turn this piece right side out. And I'm gonna give this a good press and then I'm gonna do a basting stitch here and a basting stitch here. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've basted the shorter sides and now I'm gonna use my D-rings and you're gonna put both of them on this loop and you're going to head back to your machine and baste this closed. Okay, so take your left skirt front again and these 2 dots just above your lamb chop pocket is where we're gonna place this D-ring. And we're gonna place it with the D-ring laying on top of this lamb chop pocket. So not like this, but like this. And you're gonna place it right in between these 2 dots. And you are going to stitch this down at your sewing machine. Now we're going to bring back pattern piece number 11, where again, the darts should already be complete. And we are going to put this right sides together. And we are going to place this right on top. And we are going to pin and sew this at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so now that this seam is finished, I pressed it towards the back skirt piece, and so now go ahead and stay stitch across the top edge of your skirt. I recommend decreasing the stitch length and also doing it at about 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so after you've done your straight stitch, go ahead and grab your right front, and now we're actually going to do the zipper install. So you should have 2 dots. One dot should be a little bit more on the narrower edge than the one on the right front skirt. So for this one, and that's why I kind of wanted you guys to do this first. That way there wouldn't be any confusion about which is the right and the left. I know I struggle with that, so I wanted to make it easier for y'all. But we're going to literally put these right sides together, and we're going to stitch from this line all the way to those double notches, or stitch from this dot to those double notches. While we're at our machine, we're going to take pattern piece number 3 and we're going to fold it right sides together, and we're going to baste at this bottom edge right here. Then you're going to trim this and turn it right side out and give it a good press. You can do a finger press here if you like to. And we're also just going to baste these raw edges down. So we're going to set pattern piece number 3 to the side, but we are going to need it soon. And on the left skirt, so the skirt where you have the pocket, go ahead and do a narrow press. This is about 3/8, and it follows the guideline on the pattern piece. Press it under on the wrong side, right where you have that stitch starting, and then at the top. So it should look just like this. And then you're going to grab your zipper. All right, so I have my zipper, and I'm going to unzip it. I'm literally going to place this with the teeth just at the edge here. And you want to make sure you have an exposed zipper. And also you want to make sure that it works, that it can zip up and down. Yep. And it's okay that it's a little longer than the opening. I actually prefer that. That way there's no peekaboo moments. Okay. And then we are going to take this to our machine and we are going to stitch this in. I do recommend using a zipper foot if you have one. So this is kind of what the zipper foot looks like. It could vary on different machines, but this is what mine looks like. So I'm going to switch it out right quick. And it makes it a lot easier to sew in your zipper with this foot. And you may have to move your needle over, like how I just did, in order to get the placement as close to the edge as possible. All right, and you guys remember pattern piece number 3. So we are going to take that and place it right behind our zipper. And we're going to pin it in place. So what I like to do is I like to stitch this piece right on top of this same stitch line. That way it's not messy or anything like that, and I've got one stitch line to create the entire fly front. So I lowered my needle in the same spot. That way it can be on track for the same stitch line. All right, let's take pattern piece number 2. I went ahead and finished the raw edge, and then this has been interfaced as well. And right sides together, and as a matter of fact, I'm just reinforcing those notches. So you have notches here and you have notches here. You're going to pin this in place. So matching the notches, go ahead and stitch this. Once this is stitched down, go ahead and you can trim it. All right. So I've gone ahead and I have trimmed this down, so I'm actually going to do an edge stitch. So I've done an edge stitch, and we're going to take this back to our cutting table. All right, so we are kind of in the last couple of steps of this zipper front. So I just zipped it up, but this side is not attached to anything yet, and that's what we're going to do next. All right, so I've turned it over, and I'm going to pin this out of place because I don't want it in the way. And you'll see why in a sec. But I do want to make sure that my fly front will cover said zipper. So I only want to make sure that this side of the zipper is going to catch on to this piece right here. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my sewing machine and I'm gonna actually stitch it down on this side so I can see that it's catching. Okay, so we have our zipper installed. So if you take pattern piece number 2, you can actually trace the stitch line that you want to make that fly front zipper, that signature hook that they have. And you can use a pen, a soluble pen, to kind of do those markings, and then take it to your machine and make the stitch line just like this. And I would also use some pins to kind of keep it in place while you're stitching that. As you get towards the end and you get along the curve, be careful not to
sew into your zipper if it is longer than the actual space that you have, and just kind of carefully go over that space. And you can do a bar tack here if you like.
All right, so we've done our stitch line, and now I am going to secure this with some heavy duty button thread. You can get this from any craft store. And I put a little dot here because I want to just kind of secure this bottom part here. That way when you're zipping it open and closed, you have no peekaboo moments and whatnot. But that's pretty much it. So now that we're done with our zipper, we are going to pin this bottom half in place and stitch this up at 5/8 at our machine. And you're welcome to finish these raw edges as well. All right, so now we're going to work on our waistbands. So we are going to take the interfaced version of pattern piece number 7, which is, it'll have like your buttonhole dots and all that stuff. And we are going to pin this to this edge of this skirt here. Okay, and you're going to have a little bit of some seam allowance on this side. Now we're going to take pattern pieces 8 and 12, make sure they're both the interfaced ones, and we are going to join these at the notches here at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance at your machine. Okay, and make sure the seam is pressed open, and now we are going to attach this to the longer side of our skirt, and we are going to be matching up those notches on our skirt to our waistband. And this edge on the end here is going to bump right up against the edge of the waistband. So you'll have a little bit of seam allowance on this front side here. Just a smidge. Okay, so this is pattern piece number 9, which is known as the wrap. And I've actually made little clips right here and right here for our corners. But on this side, you have a notch.
So this is where we actually attach the second lamb chop pocket. So go ahead and attach the facing and do the understitching, and then do your 5/8 stitch to get the corner right there, and then do your 2 rows of top stitching just like we did the other side.
All right, once you have attached your pocket, go ahead and fold this and press this edge under by 5/8. Then get your seam gauge and mark where it is 1 3/4 inches. And that's where we are going to trim off some of this. Okay. Then the next thing we're going to do is, and remember those slits that I did, like here and then right here? Fold your fabric along that crease and press here. And we're going to do a stitch along this line. So I have already, after I've done this stitch, I've already gone and pressed this under, or up, excuse me. So I pressed this up by 1/4 inch, and then I pressed it again by 1 3/4 inches and pressed it down. So at this point, you are going to top stitch this hemline, and then if you want, you can also do some hand stitching right here to close up that gap as well. So not only have I finished this hem, but I've also stay stitched the top edge. And now I'm going to take pattern piece number 10, and I'm going to match up the notches and pin this to this skirt piece. All right, matching the notches here and here. Go ahead and pin, and you're gonna have a ton of slack on this outward facing side because this is technically the belt. And then you're gonna take this to your sewing machine and sew it at 5/8. So now take the uninterfaced pattern piece number 10 and lay it on top. And we are going to sew all the way across the top, down the end, and then across here where you'll stop and meet this stitch line right here. And then you're going to turn it right side out. So I'm actually going to put a pin right here to know to stop right here. And we'll sew this at 5/8 at our machine. Okay, so now we're going to trim the seam allowance, and then we're going to take it to our iron and give it a good press. So now that I've given it a good press and turned it right side out, so you have the little belt right here, I'm going to understitch the facing, or the all right, so I have understitched the belt. And then the next thing you want to do is press the seam allowance under and slip stitch that. Or you can stitch in the ditch, completely up to you, whichever one you want to do. All right, let's go back to our main skirt piece. And on the blank side, we are actually going to pin the front flap to this side. So basically taking the wrong side of the skirt and pinning it to the right side of the main skirt piece. Just like this. And then make sure you guys match up the notch right here and right here. It is supposed to be a little off center a little bit because it is a wrap and everything, so it won't necessarily line up with this this pattern piece right here. So just make sure that you are paying attention to that notch. So we're going to pin this in place, and we're going to sew this at 5/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, and now that that is sewn in place, we are actually going to take our skirt and basically take the raw edge of the back side seam and meet it up to this side seam. And sewing through all thicknesses, all layers, we are literally going to pin and sew at 5/8 all the way down. All right. Okay, now we're going to work on our waistbands. And so this is pattern piece number 12. We're going to put this in the center. And this is pattern piece number 8. And we're going to put this right here. Make sure that you're using the notches to follow your guide or to guide you. And I actually wrote on my pattern pieces. That way I would just know once I went back to these that they would be, you know, the pieces that I needed. So this is 12, this is 8, and this is pattern piece number 7. Again, I want to make sure I'm following the notches to help guide me through this. And then we are going to press those seams open, and then you're going to do a stitch across the bottom of this curved edge here at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and we're going to press that up and come back to our table. All right, and we're back to our table. And once again, I have pressed those seams open and I have done a 5/8 stitch along the bottom and pressed the seam towards the facing. So now I'm going to grab my main skirt piece again. And at this point, because we have added everything in, it is really starting to come together and we're down to the last steps. So now we are going to start putting together this waistband and adding it onto the skirt piece. All right, so we're going to take this to our sewing machine and go along the short edge all the way across, all the way across the top edge, and then back down the other side. Make sure you trim those seam allowances as well while you're at your machine. So now we're going to trim the edges and the seam allowance. All right, once you're done trimming the seam allowance, poke out your corners. You can do this with scissors or a point turner or anything like that. And give it a good press, but press the seam allowance towards the facing, and you're going to understitch as far as you can to the corners. Okay, so once you have understitched, go ahead and press your waistband down, and you can either slip stitch or stitch in the ditch. Me personally, I very much prefer to stitch in the ditch, so that is what I'm going to do now. All right, once you have done your waistband, go ahead and add your button right here. Do your buttonhole and your button right here, and then your hem should be 1 3/4 inches all the way around. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching that tutorial. Now, if you like this video and want to see more, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And you can actually subscribe to my channel right here on YouTube at Raven Maureen. And you can also subscribe to my other social media channels at Raven Maureen on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. See you guys next time. Bye.